The morning sun cast long shadows across Riverside Air Force Base as Rachel Davis pushed her cleaning cart through the main hangar. At 42, she had perfected the art of invisibility. Head down, movements quiet, never making eye contact with the officers who strutted past in their pressed uniforms. For 8 years, she had been nothing more than background noise, the black cleaning lady who emptied their trash and scrubbed their floors. "Morning, Rachel," called out Master Sergeant Williams, one of the few who bothered to acknowledge her existence. He was loading equipment near the F-16 fighter jets, the same aircraft that made her heart ache every time she saw them. "Morning, Sergeant," she replied softly, her voice barely audible over the distant hum of aircraft engines. Williams was different from the others, respectful, kind. He reminded her of the good people she used to serve alongside, back when she wore a different uniform. Rachel had arrived at Riverside 8 years ago with nothing but a fake resume and a desperate need to disappear. The personnel office barely glanced at her application. A middle-aged black woman seeking janitorial work? She was hired on the spot, no questions asked. It was perfect camouflage. As she mopped the gleaming floors, Rachel listened to the conversations around her. Pilots discussing flight patterns, mechanics debating engine specifications, officers complaining about budget cuts. She absorbed every word, every technical detail, like a sponge. Old habits died hard. The hangar housed 12 F-16 Fighting Falcons, each worth $30 million. Rachel knew their specifications by heart, not from reading manuals, but from muscle memory. She had once commanded a squadron of similar aircraft back when her name was Captain Phoenix Williams, and she was one of the Air Force's most decorated pilots. That was before the conspiracy, before the forged documents, before her entire life was systematically destroyed by corrupt officials who needed a scapegoat. Captain Bradley Thompson's voice echoed across the hangar, interrupting her thoughts. "Make sure that area's properly cleaned," he barked at her, pointing to a section she had already scrubbed twice. "We have VIP inspections this week." Thompson was the embodiment of everything wrong with the military's old boys network. Son of a senator, Harvard graduate who had never seen real combat, carried by family connections and political influence. At 35, he commanded respect he hadn't earned and wielded authority like a weapon. "Yes, sir," Rachel replied, keeping her eyes down. She had learned long ago that looking directly at Thompson only invited trouble. "And make sure you don't touch any of the aircraft," Thompson continued, his voice dripping with condescension. "These machines are worth more than you'll earn in 10 lifetimes." Several junior officers snickered at his comment. Rachel's hands tightened on the mop handle, but she remained silent. Thompson had no idea he was speaking to someone who had once commanded aircraft worth twice as much, who had flown combat missions over hostile territory while he was still playing fraternity games at Harvard. Lieutenant Jamie Foster, Thompson's eager protege and son of a general, approached with his ever-present smartphone. "Captain, want to see the video I took of the new recruits failing their first simulator test?" "Always," Thompson grinned. "I love watching people discover their limitations." Rachel continued cleaning, but her ears perked up. She had noticed Foster's obsession with filming everything, always looking for content that would go viral. He documented every embarrassing moment, every failure, every humiliation with the enthusiasm of someone who had never experienced real hardship. As the morning progressed, Rachel observed the casual cruelty that had become normal at Riverside. Thompson and his circle mocked junior officers, berated mechanics for minor infractions, and treated support staff like invisible servants. Tidal? Base had become a reflection of Thompson's character, arrogant, entitled, and toxic. But Rachel also noticed something else. The older mechanics, the veteran sergeants, the experienced pilots who remembered when the military valued competence over connections, they watched Thompson with barely concealed disgust. They saw through his facade, recognizing incompetence wrapped in privilege. Master Sergeant Williams approached her during lunch break. "Rachel, you've been here longer than most officers. Ever think about doing something else?" The question caught her off guard. "This job suits me fine, Sergeant. It's just, you seem overqualified for cleaning. The way you carry yourself, the way you listen when people talk about technical stuff. Reminds me of someone I used to know. A pilot." Rachel's blood ran cold. "I wouldn't know anything about that, Sergeant." Williams studied her face for a moment, then nodded slowly. Course not. Just saying, sometimes the best people are hiding in plain sight. As afternoon approached, Rachel finished her rounds and prepared to leave, but Thompson's voice stopped her at the hangar door. "Davis," he called out, "tomorrow morning, 7 sharp. We're having a little demonstration for some visiting officials. Make sure this place is spotless." "Yes, sir." "And Davis," Thompson's smile was cold, "wear something presentable. Can't have you embarrassing us in front of important people." The other officers laughed, but Rachel detected something else in Thompson's voice, a hint of cruelty that suggested tomorrow would be different. Special. That night, Rachel sat in her small apartment staring at a framed photograph hidden in her closet. It showed a younger version of herself in an Air Force dress uniform, accepting the Distinguished Flying Cross from a general. Captain Phoenix Williams, decorated hero, squadron commander, one of the first African-American women to break barriers in military aviation. The woman in the photograph looked proud, confident, unbreakable. The woman staring back from the mirror looked tired, worn down by 8 years of deliberate invisibility. But beneath the surface, Phoenix Williams was still there, waiting. Rachel had spent 8 years learning Thompson's routines, his weaknesses, his associates. She knew about his family's political connections, his mediocre service record, and his habit of taking credit for other people's work. She had been gathering information, not for revenge, but for survival. Tomorrow, Thompson had promised a demonstration. He had no idea that he was about to awaken something that had been dormant for 8 years. The question wasn't whether Rachel Davis could continue hiding. The question was whether Phoenix Williams was ready to fly again. The next morning arrived with unusual tension in the air. Rachel noticed it immediately as she wheeled her cart into the hangar. Too many officers present for a routine day, too much excitement buzzing through conversations, too many smartphones being discreetly positioned. "There she is," Thompson's voice carried across the space as he pointed directly at her. "Our star of the show." Rachel's instincts, honed by years of military training and 8 years of survival, immediately recognized danger. This wasn't a normal day. Thompson had planned something, and she was the target. Master Sergeant Williams approached her, concern etched on his weathered face. "Rachel, what's going on here? Thompson's been talking about some kind of demonstration all morning." "I don't know, Sergeant," she replied honestly, though her mind was already calculating exit strategies and defensive positions. Old habits surfaced like muscle memory. Lieutenant Foster was setting up his camera equipment with unusual care, checking angles and lighting like he was preparing for a professional broadcast. Other junior officers clustered nearby, their expressions ranging from anticipation to discomfort. "Attention, everyone," Thompson announced, his voice carrying the artificial authority of someone who confused position with leadership. "Today we're going to conduct a little educational experiment." Rachel continued cleaning, but every sense was hyper-aware. The hangar's acoustics meant she could hear conversations from across the space, the placement of personnel, the location of exits, the distance to the nearest security station. Her training was taking over despite her efforts to remain invisible. "You see," Thompson continued, warming to his audience, "there's been a lot of talk lately about diversity in military aviation, about how anyone can do anything if given the chance." His tone made it clear what he thought of that concept. Several officers exchanged glances. Even among Thompson's supporters, some looked uncomfortable with where this was heading. "So I thought we'd put that theory to the test," Thompson smiled, and Rachel felt ice form in her stomach. "Our beloved cleaning lady here is going to show us what it takes to be a pilot." The hangar fell silent. Rachel stopped cleaning, her hands gripping the mop handle as she processed the implications. Thompson wasn't just planning humiliation. He was planning to film it, broadcast it, turn her into a viral joke. "Sir," Master Sergeant Williams stepped forward, "I'm not sure this is appropriate." "Are you questioning my judgment, Sergeant?" Thompson's voice carried a warning that made Williams reluctantly step back. Foster raised his smartphone, already recording. "This is going to be epic. Cleaning lady thinks she can fly, will break the internet." Rachel's mind raced through options. She could refuse, but Thompson would find ways to make her life unbearable until she was forced to quit. She could comply and endure the humiliation, but the video would follow her forever. Or, "What exactly are you asking me to do, Captain?" she asked quietly. Thompson's grin widened. "Simple. You're going to sit in that F-16. He pointed to the nearest aircraft. "Put on a flight suit and show us your piloting skills. Should be easy, right? Since anyone can do anything." The cruelty was breathtaking. Thompson wanted to film a middle-aged black cleaning woman failing at something she obviously couldn't do, then broadcast her humiliation to the world. It was designed to be both personally devastating and a broader statement about knowing your place. But Thompson had made a critical error. He assumed Rachel Davis was just a cleaning lady. "I need to finish my cleaning rounds first," Rachel said, buying time to think. "Cleaning can wait," Thompson's voice hardened. "This is a direct order. Foster, start recording. I want every second documented." Foster's camera was already rolling, capturing the entire scene. Other officers had their phones out too, some recording, others preparing to share whatever was about to happen on social media. Rachel set down her mop and looked at the F-16 Fighting Falcon. $30 million of advanced military technology, capable of Mach 2.05, armed with a 20mm cannon and external weapon pylons. She knew every switch, every gauge, every system in that cockpit. The aircraft called to her like a siren song. For 8 years she had walked past these jets every day, remembering what it felt like to command such power, to dance through the sky with precision that made observers weep. The F-16 was more than a machine. It was an extension of the pilots. Will and Rachel had once been among the best at making that connection. "Come on, Davis," Thompson called out. "Unless you're admitting that some jobs require actual qualifications?" The taunt hit its mark, but not in the way Thompson intended. Rachel felt something stir inside her that had been dormant for 8 years. Not anger. Anger was undisciplined. Purpose. Master Sergeant Williams caught her eye and shook his head slightly. A warning. He had seen enough military careers destroyed by confronting superior officers. He was trying to protect her, the only way he could. But Rachel was done being protected. Done hiding. Done letting small men with big egos determine her worth. "I'll need a flight suit," she said simply. Thompson's eyes lit up with malicious joy. "Foster, did you get that? She actually thinks she can do it?" He turned to a nearby equipment locker. "Get her a used suit. Wouldn't want to waste good equipment on this demonstration." As Foster rummaged through the equipment, other personnel began gathering. Word was spreading through the base that something unusual was happening in Hangar 7. Rachel could see faces appearing at windows, mechanics stopping their work, even some off-duty pilots drawn by curiosity. The flight suit Foster handed her was worn and faded, clearly picked to add to her humiliation. Rachel took it without comment, but her hands moved with practiced efficiency as she examined the equipment. Proper size, functional zippers, standard safety features. It would do. "There's a changing room behind the supply cabinet," Williams said quietly. "Take your time." As Rachel walked toward the changing area, she heard Thompson addressing his audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, prepare to witness the difference between fantasy and reality, between what people think they can do and what they actually can do." Alone in the small changing room, Rachel stared at the flight suit in her hands. The last time she had worn one was 8 years ago, on her final mission as Captain Phoenix Williams, the mission that had uncovered the conspiracy, the mission that had destroyed her career and nearly gotten her killed, but it had also been the mission that proved she was one of the finest pilots the Air Force had ever produced. Rachel began to change clothes, her movements becoming more precise, more military, as she transformed from invisible cleaning lady to something else entirely. The flight suit fit perfectly, molding to her body like a second skin. In the mirror, she saw Phoenix Williams looking back at her. Thompson had no idea what he had just unleashed. Rachel emerged from the changing room wearing the flight suit, and something fundamental had shifted. Her posture was different, straighter, more confident. Her movements had gained a precision that made several veteran mechanics pause and take notice. "Well, well," Thompson announced loudly, ensuring his voice carried to the growing crowd of onlookers. "Don't you look official. Foster, make sure you get a good shot of this costume party." Foster's camera captured everything as Rachel walked toward the F-16, but something in her stride made him frown. "Thompson," he whispered, still filming, "does she seem different to you?" "Different how?" Thompson was too focused on his audience to pay attention. "I don't know, man. More military?" Rachel reached the aircraft and stood before it, her eyes scanning the fuselage with practiced efficiency. "The F-16C Block 50, she noted mentally. Single-seat, single-engine, multi-role fighter. She had flown this exact variant hundreds of times. "Admiring the view?" Thompson called out. "That's about as close as someone like you will ever get to real military aviation." The crowd had grown to nearly 50 people. Word had spread through the base that Captain Thompson was conducting some kind of demonstration with the cleaning lady. Phones were recording from multiple angles, and someone had started a live stream that was already attracting viewers. Master Sergeant Williams approached Thompson with obvious concern. "Sir, maybe we should reconsider this. If something goes wrong, what could go wrong?" Thompson's confidence was absolute. "She's going to sit in the cockpit, realize she's completely out of her depth, and we'll all have a good laugh. Educational for everyone." But Williams wasn't looking at Thompson. He was watching Rachel, and what he saw made his blood run cold. The way she examined the aircraft's external systems, the automatic check of the pitot tubes, the professional assessment of the landing gear, these weren't the actions of someone unfamiliar with military aircraft. "Captain," Williams tried again, "I really think—" "That's enough, Sergeant," Thompson cut him off. "Davis, climb up and get in the cockpit. Let's see how you handled $20 million worth of American engineering." Rachel looked up at the cockpit ladder, then back at Thompson. For a moment, their eyes met directly, something that hadn't happened in 8 years of her working at the base. What Thompson saw in her gaze should have been a warning. Instead of the fear or uncertainty he saw calculation. "Any particular reason you chose this aircraft, Captain?" Rachel asked quietly. Thompson blinked, surprised by the question. "What?" "This F-16, tail number 910376. Any particular reason?" The specificity of her question made several officers exchange glances. How did a cleaning lady know aircraft tail numbers? "It's just a plane," Thompson said dismissively, but his voice carried a hint of uncertainty. Rachel nodded slowly. "Just a plane." She placed her foot on the ladder's first rung. "Foster, make sure you get good footage. This is going to be educational for everyone." As she climbed, her movements were fluid and confident. No hesitation, no uncertainty about handholds or foot placement. She ascended the ladder like someone who had done it 1,000 times before. "Holy crap," whispered one of the younger mechanics to his colleague. "Look how she's climbing. That's not a beginner." Thompson was too focused on his humiliation plan to notice the growing murmur of concern from the experienced personnel. "That's right, Davis. Get comfortable up there. We'll give you a few minutes to figure out which end is the front." Rachel reached the cockpit and paused, looking down at the assembled crowd. From this height, she could see the entire hangar, count the personnel, assess the situation tactically. The view from an F-16 cockpit was achingly familiar. "Take your time," Thompson called out. "No rush to embarrass yourself." Rachel swung her leg over and settled into the ejection seat. The moment she made contact, muscle memory flooded through her system. Her hands moved automatically to adjust the seat position. Her feet found the rudder pedals without looking. Her body settled into the perfect piloting posture. The cockpit embraced her like coming home. Foster's camera captured the transformation, though he didn't understand what he was seeing. "Thompson, something's weird. She looks comfortable." "She's faking it," Thompson replied, but his voice lacked conviction. Inside the cockpit, Rachel's hands hovered over controls she knew better than her own heartbeat, the heads-up display, the multifunction displays, the hands-on throttle and stick system. Every switch, every button, every gauge was exactly where. Her training had burned into her memory. For 8 years, she had walked past these aircraft every day, cleaning around them while suppressing the urge to climb in and remember what it felt like to truly fly. Now, surrounded by the familiar embrace of the cockpit, Phoenix Williams stirred to life. "How's it going up there?" Thompson shouted. "Figured out the seatbelt yet?" Rachel's response came over the aircraft's external communication system, her voice carrying the crisp professionalism of a trained pilot. "Cockpit familiarization complete. All systems nominal. Requesting pre-flight authorization." The hangar fell silent. Master Sergeant Williams felt his stomach drop. He recognized that voice, that terminology, that level of professional competence. "Oh, God," he whispered. Thompson stared up at the cockpit, his confidence beginning to crack. What did she just say? Foster's live stream was exploding with comments. Viewers were asking who this woman was, noting her professional demeanor, questioning whether this was some kind of setup. "Pre-flight authorization?" Thompson's voice rose an octave. "What are you talking about?" Rachel's voice came back, calm and controlled. "Standard pre-flight procedures, Captain, unless you want me to skip safety protocols." The question hung in the air like a challenge. Thompson had backed himself into a corner. He had demanded a demonstration, but now his victim was speaking like an actual pilot. Backing down would look weak in front of the cameras, but continuing forward was leading into unknown territory. "She's bluffing," Thompson announced to the crowd, though he sounded like he was trying to convince himself. Anyone can memorize pilot jargon. But the experienced personnel weren't convinced. The mechanics, the veteran sergeants, the older pilots, they had all heard real competence, and they recognized it in Rachel's voice. Colonel James Martinez, the base commander, chose that moment to enter the hangar. He had been drawn by reports of an unusual gathering in Hangar 7, expecting to find a minor training exercise or equipment demonstration. Instead, he found nearly 100 personnel crowded around an F-16 with someone in the cockpit. "What exactly is going on here?" Martinez demanded. Thompson straightened, trying to regain control of the situation. "Sir, we're conducting a practical demonstration of pilot qualifications, educational purposes." Martinez looked up at the cockpit, then back at Thompson. "And who authorized using military aircraft for educational purposes?" The question exposed the flaw in Thompson's plan. He had been so focused on humiliating Rachel that he had forgotten proper protocols. Using military aircraft without authorization was a serious breach of regulations. "It's just a static demonstration, sir," Thompson said quickly. "No actual flying." From the cockpit, Rachel's voice cut through the tension. "Colonel Martinez, permission to speak?" Martinez looked up, surprised. The voice carried military bearing and proper protocol. "Granted." "Sir, I'd like to request formal permission to conduct a complete systems check on this aircraft. Captain Thompson has challenged my qualifications, and I'd like to provide a comprehensive response." The request was delivered with such professional precision that Martinez found himself automatically responding in kind. "State your qualifications for conducting aircraft systems checks." There was a pause that seemed to last forever. Rachel's next words would either end her charade or begin something that would change everything. "Sir, my qualifications are Captain Phoenix Williams, call sign Phoenix, formerly of the 354th Fighter Squadron, 8 years in active status, but certified on all F-16 variants and qualified for unrestricted flight operations." The hangar erupted in shocked murmurs. Martinez went pale. Master Sergeant Williams closed his eyes and whispered, "I knew it." Thompson stared up at the cockpit in horror. "That's impossible. Phoenix Williams is dead." Rachel's voice came back, carrying 8 years of suppressed truth. "Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated, Captain. Now, about that demonstration you wanted." The cleaning lady was gone. In her place sat one of the most decorated fighter pilots in Air Force history, and she was done hiding. The silence in the hangar was deafening. Colonel Martinez stared up at the cockpit, his mind racing through classified files and buried reports. Phoenix Williams, the pilot who had disappeared 8 years ago amid controversy and classified investigations. That's impossible, Thompson repeated, his voice cracking. Phoenix Williams was court-martialed for treason. She's dead. Negative. Rachel's voice carried new authority. Captain Phoenix Williams was framed by corrupt officials. She survived, and she's been cleaning your toilets for 8 years while gathering evidence of the conspiracy that destroyed her career. Foster's live stream was going viral. Comments poured in from military personnel around the world, many recognizing the name Phoenix Williams. "Holy shit," Foster whispered, still filming. "We're recording military history." Colonel Martinez made a command decision that would change everything. "Clear the hangar. All non-essential personnel out, now." "Sir," Thompson protested, "this is my demonstration." "Captain Thompson, you are relieved of duty pending investigation. Security, escort Captain Thompson to holding." The crowd began to disperse, but phones were still recording. The story was already spreading beyond the base, beyond military channels, into the wider world where Phoenix Williams had once been a household name. Master Sergeant Williams remained behind, approaching the aircraft with reverence. "Captain Williams, it's an honor. I served under your command at Osan Air Base, Korea. You saved my life during the night intercept mission." Rachel's voice carried emotion for the first time. "Sergeant Williams, I remember. You stayed with Johnson when his aircraft went down." "Yes, ma'am. Following your orders." Martinez activated the hangar's secure communication system. "This conversation is now classified. Captain Williams, I need to understand what happened 8 years ago." From the cockpit, Rachel began to speak, her words carrying the weight of long-suppressed truth. "Colonel, 8 years ago I discovered that General Morrison was selling weapons to terrorist organizations. When I reported it through proper channels, I found myself framed for the very crimes I was trying to expose." "General Morrison is dead," Martinez said quietly. "Yes, sir. But his network survived. His son-in-law married into the Thompson family. Captain Thompson's father, Colonel Robert Thompson, was Morrison's primary contact in the weapons trafficking operation." Thompson, who had been about to leave with security, spun around. "That's a lie. My father is a war hero." "Your father." "He's a traitor," Rachel's voice was steel. "And I have proof." Martinez felt the weight of history settling on his shoulders. "Captain Williams, what proof?" Morrison's deathbed confession, recorded by his priest. Bank records showing payments to the Thompson family accounts. Communication logs between Morrison and Colonel Thompson. 8 years of investigation, Colonel. I've been building a case while hiding in plain sight. The implications were staggering. If Rachel was telling the truth, the scandal would reach the highest levels of military and political leadership. "Sir," Master Sergeant Williams interjected, "Captain Williams was the finest pilot I ever served with. If she says she has evidence, I believe her." Martinez made another crucial decision. "Captain Williams, I'm ordering a full investigation into your claims. In the meantime, you're hereby reinstated to active duty pending review." "Thank you, sir, but I have a different request." "Which is?" "Permission to demonstrate that I am exactly who I claim to be. Let me show everyone what Captain Thompson thought was impossible." Martinez considered the request. The situation was already public thanks to Foster's live stream. Trying to contain it now would only fuel more speculation. "Captain Williams, it's been 8 years since you've flown. Are you certain you're still qualified?" Rachel's laugh carried no humor. "Colonel, I've spent 8 years watching incompetent pilots fumble through procedures I could perform in my sleep. I've listened to officers like Thompson dismiss the capabilities of people they consider beneath them. Today I'd like to remind everyone what real competence looks like." Foster's camera captured Martinez's internal struggle. The live stream audience had grown to over 50,000 viewers, with military personnel and aviation enthusiasts from around the world tuning in. "The risks," Martinez began. "Are minimal," Rachel interrupted. "This is a routine F-16 in perfect condition. I'm current on all safety protocols, familiar with this base's airspace, and frankly, Colonel, I need to prove to myself as much as anyone else that Phoenix Williams is still alive." Thompson, still under security escort, made one last desperate attempt. "She's lying. This is all an elaborate hoax. A cleaning lady can't just become a fighter pilot." "Captain Thompson, Rachel's voice carried quiet authority. "Your ignorance is showing. I didn't become a fighter pilot. I always was one. I just spent 8 years pretending to be something else while I investigated the corruption that destroyed my career." Martinez looked around the hangar, at Williams, who clearly recognized and respected Rachel, at Foster, whose camera was broadcasting this conversation to the world, at the growing crowd of personnel who had returned despite orders to leave. Military careers were built on split-second decisions under pressure. Martinez made his. "Captain Williams, you have my authorization for a full flight demonstration. Master Sergeant Williams, prep this aircraft for immediate departure. Foster, keep recording. The world needs to see this." Thompson's legs gave out. His entire worldview was collapsing in real time, broadcast to thousands of viewers who were witnessing the resurrection of a legend. "Colonel," Rachel's voice carried gratitude and something else, something that had been missing for 8 years. Hope. "Yes, Captain. Thank you for believing in second chances. Captain Williams, something tells me you never needed a second chance. You just needed the right moment to remind us all who you really are." As maintenance crews rushed to prepare the aircraft, Rachel ran through her pre-flight mental checklist. 8 years of suppressed identity, 8 years of watching inferior pilots, 8 years of knowing she could fly circles around anyone on the base. Today, Phoenix Williams was going to rise from the ashes of Rachel Davis, and the world was watching. Within minutes, the hangar transformed into a command center. Colonel Martinez had activated full flight operations protocol, but this wasn't a routine mission. This was the resurrection of one of military aviation's greatest legends, broadcast live to an audience that was growing exponentially. "Current viewer count is over 200,000, Foster announced, his camera capturing every detail. "Military aviation forums are exploding. People are sharing stories about Phoenix Williams from around the world." Master Sergeant Williams coordinated the pre-flight preparation with the efficiency of someone who had worked with elite pilots for decades. "Captain Williams, we're running full diagnostics now. Aircraft will be flight ready in 15 minutes. Rachel's voice from the cockpit was calm and professional. "Copy that, Sergeant. I'm running preliminary systems checks." Her hands moved across the controls with practiced precision, each movement demonstrating years of training and experience. The muscle memory was perfect. 8 years hadn't diminished her technical expertise by even a fraction. Colonel Martinez established communication with the base's air traffic control. "Tower, this is Base Commander Martinez. We have an extraordinary situation developing. I need you to clear airspace for a special demonstration flight." "Sir," came the confused response, "we have no demonstration flight scheduled." "You do. Now, pilot is Captain Phoenix Williams, call sign Phoenix. I'm sending her credentials to your station immediately." The silence that followed spoke volumes. Phoenix Williams was a name that still commanded respect in aviation circles, even 8 years later. Thompson, now in custody but still within earshot, made one final desperate attempt. "This is insane! You're all being fooled by an elaborate hoax!" Rachel's response came through the aircraft's external speakers, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded respect at the highest levels of military aviation. "Captain Thompson, your grandfather, General Morrison, confessed to selling American weapons to terrorist organizations. Your father, Colonel Thompson, was his primary accomplice. Your family's wealth was built on blood money, and I have documented proof of every transaction." The words fell like bombs in the enclosed space. Martinez immediately activated security protocols. "That's classified information. Foster, stop recording." "Sir," Foster replied, "the stream is already public. Trying to stop it now would only confirm the allegations." Martinez realized they had passed the point of containment. The story was already spreading through military channels and social media. The only option now was complete transparency. "Captain Williams," Martinez called out, "are you prepared to substantiate these allegations?" "Affirmative, Colonel. I have a complete file of evidence compiled over 8 years of investigation. Bank records, recorded conversations, documentary. Evidence of the conspiracy that framed me for the crimes I was trying to expose." The revelation sent shockwaves through the watching personnel. Several officers who had served with the Thompson family looked stricken, realizing they had been associated with a corruption scandal of unprecedented scope. "Tower, this is Phoenix," Rachel's voice carried over the radio with professional crispness. Requesting clearance for unrestricted demonstration flight. Duration approximately 30 minutes. Phoenix, this is Tower. Clearance granted. Airspace cleared. Phoenix. The tower operator's voice carried emotion. Welcome back. The simple words carried tremendous weight. Phoenix Williams was officially returning to the sky after 8 years of exile. Foster's live stream chat was moving too fast to read. Military personnel from around the world were sharing their own Phoenix Williams stories. Missions where her leadership had saved lives, innovations in flight tactics, moments of extraordinary courage under fire. Master Sergeant Williams completed his final checks. Captain, aircraft is green across the board. All systems nominal. You are cleared for flight operations. Rachel took a deep breath, her hands settling on the controls she had missed for 8 long years. Copy that, Sergeant. Phoenix requesting engine start clearance. Phoenix, you are cleared for engine start. The F-16's engine roared to life with the distinctive whine of a Pratt & Whitney F-100 turbofan. The sound filled the hangar like a proclamation. Phoenix Williams was no longer hiding. Taxi clearance. Requested. Rachel's voice was steady, professional, and carried the confidence of someone completely in control of a complex military aircraft. Phoenix, cleared to taxi to runway 09, wind 270 at 8 knots. Good luck, Captain. As the F-16 began to move, propelled by Rachel's expert control, the watching crowd fell silent. This was no longer a cruel joke or a humiliation exercise. This was military history in the making. Thompson watched in horror as his carefully planned humiliation transformed into the vindication of a true American hero. "This isn't possible," he whispered to himself. Colonel Martinez activated the base's communication system. "All personnel, you are witnessing the return of Captain Phoenix Williams, one of the finest pilots in Air Force history. Show appropriate respect." The F-16 taxied with perfect precision, Rachel's control evident in every movement. 8 years of forced retirement hadn't diminished her skills. If anything, her hunger to fly again had sharpened her focus to a razor's edge. "Phoenix, you are cleared for takeoff. Runway 09, wind 270 at 8 knots. Rachel's response carried 8 years of suppressed joy. "Tower, Phoenix is ready to fly." Foster's camera captured the aircraft positioning at the runway threshold. The live stream audience had grown to over 500,000 viewers, with people around the world watching a legend return to the sky. In the cockpit, Rachel closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the aircraft's power beneath her, remembering every flight that had brought her to this moment. The missions in Afghanistan, the training exercises that had pushed her to excellence, the day she had first earned her call sign by performing a maneuver that saved her entire squadron. "This is for every person who was told they didn't belong," she whispered to herself. Then to the tower. "Phoenix, requesting takeoff clearance." "Phoenix, you are cleared for takeoff. Show them what you've got, Captain." Rachel pushed the throttle forward, and the F-16 began its acceleration down the runway. 8 years of exile were about to end in the most spectacular way possible. Phoenix Williams was going home, to the sky where she belonged. The F-16 accelerated down the runway with perfect precision, Rachel's control evident in every aspect of the takeoff. At exactly 140 knots, she pulled back on the stick, and the aircraft lifted off as smoothly as if it were defying gravity rather than conquering it. Foster's camera captured the moment from the hangar, but the real drama was visible to anyone who understood aviation. This wasn't a rusty pilot struggling to remember old skills. This was a master craftsman returning to her art. "Tower, Phoenix is airborne." Rachel's voice carried a joy that had been missing for 8 years. "Phoenix, contact departure control, and Captain, it's good to have you back." The live stream audience had exploded to over 800,000 viewers. Comments poured in from military personnel worldwide, many sharing their own memories of Phoenix Williams' legendary flying skills. Colonel Martinez established communication with the aircraft. "Phoenix, how do you feel?" "Like I'm finally home, Colonel," Rachel replied, her voice carrying 8 years of suppressed emotion. "Requesting permission for aerobatic demonstration." "Phoenix, you are cleared for unrestricted aerobatic maneuvers. Airspace is yours." What happened next redefined the concept of aerial mastery. Rachel began with a series of standard maneuvers, barrel rolls, loops, and Immelman turns, each executed with surgical precision that made veteran pilots watching from the ground shake their heads in amazement. "She's flying like she never left the cockpit," Master Sergeant Williams observed, watching the aircraft dance through the sky. But Rachel was just warming up. 8 years of forced inactivity had created a hunger for flight that now demanded expression. She transitioned into advanced maneuvers that pushed both aircraft and pilot to their limits. The Pugachev's Cobra came first, a maneuver where the aircraft literally stops in mid-air, raises its nose to vertical, then smoothly transitions back to normal flight. Only the world's most skilled pilots could perform it safely. Rachel executed it flawlessly. Foster's live-stream chat exploded with comments from pilots around the world. "Impossible! I've never seen a Cobra that clean. This woman is supernatural." "My God," Colonel Martinez whispered, watching through binoculars. "She's not just flying that aircraft, she's conducting a symphony." Thompson, still in security custody, watched in growing horror as his cruel joke transformed into a vindication of everything he had tried to destroy. "This isn't real," he kept repeating. "This can't be real." But it was real, and Rachel was far from finished. She transitioned into a series of knife-edge passes, flying the aircraft sideways at low altitude, with margins of error measured in feet. Each pass demonstrated not just skill, but absolute fearlessness. The base personnel had gathered outside, hundreds of people watching the demonstration in stunned silence. Even those who had no aviation background could recognize they were witnessing something extraordinary. "Phoenix," came a new voice over the radio. "This is General Patricia Hayes, Air Force Chief of Staff. I'm watching your demonstration via live feed." Rachel's heart skipped. General Hayes had been a mentor during her early career, one of the few senior officers who had believed in her potential when others saw only barriers. "General Hayes, this is Phoenix. Honored to hear from you, ma'am." "Captain Williams, your flying today is reminding everyone why you were considered one of our finest pilots. But I need to ask about the allegations regarding the Thompson family. And General Morrison? Ma'am, I have complete documentation of the conspiracy. Morrison's deathbed confession, financial records, communication logs, everything needed to prove the corruption that led to my framing 8 years ago. Captain, I'm ordering a full investigation effective immediately. In the meantime, I want to offer you something." Rachel performed a perfect split-S maneuver while listening, diving from altitude and pulling out in a graceful arc that showcased both the aircraft's capabilities and her own skill. "What's that, General?" "Your old squadron, the 354th Fighter Wing, is being reactivated. I want you to command it." The offer hung in the air like a prayer answered. Squadron command was the pinnacle of a fighter pilot's career, and Rachel had been denied that honor by corruption and conspiracy. "General, I'm honored by the offer, but I need to know, what about the other personnel affected by the Morrison conspiracy? The careers destroyed, the lives ruined?" "Captain, if your evidence is as comprehensive as you claim, we'll be conducting a complete review of every case connected to that network. Justice delayed, but not denied." Foster's stream had reached over 1 million viewers, with major news networks picking up the feed. The story of Phoenix Williams was spreading far beyond military circles. Rachel began her final maneuver, a vertical climb that seemed to defy physics, the F-16 ascending straight up until it was just a speck against the blue sky. At the peak, she performed a hammerhead turn, flipping the aircraft end over end before diving back toward Earth in a controlled spiral. "She's writing her signature in the sky," Williams observed with awe, as Rachel leveled out for landing. Approach, the magnitude of what had just occurred began to settle over everyone present. A woman who had been systematically destroyed by corruption had not only survived, but had returned to prove her worth in the most spectacular way possible. "Tower, Phoenix requesting landing clearance. Phoenix, cleared to land runway 09. Outstanding. Demonstration, Captain!" The landing was as perfect as everything else, a gentle touchdown that barely disturbed the aircraft's momentum. As Rachel taxied back toward the hangar, Hundreds of personnel lined the taxiway in an impromptu honor guard. Foster kept filming as the F-16 came to a stop and the engine wound down. The silence that followed was profound, the silence of witnessing something that would be remembered forever. Rachel opened the cockpit canopy and stood up, removing her helmet to reveal tears streaming down her face. Not tears of sadness, but of vindication, of justice, of a dream deferred but not destroyed. The crowd erupted in applause that echoed across the entire base. Colonel Martinez approached the aircraft with formal bearing. "Captain Phoenix Williams, on behalf of the United States Air Force, I formally apologize for the injustice you suffered and welcome you back to active duty." Rachel climbed down from the cockpit, her movements carrying the confidence of someone who had just proven herself before the world. When she reached the ground, Master Sergeant Williams was the first to greet her. "Ma'am, that was the finest flying I've ever seen. Welcome home." "Thank you, Sergeant. It's good to be back." Thompson was led away in handcuffs, his world completely collapsed. The man who had tried to humiliate a cleaning lady had instead witnessed the resurrection of an American hero. Foster ended his live stream with words that would be quoted for years. "I came here to film a cruel joke. Instead, I documented the moment when justice took flight." Phoenix Williams was no longer hiding. She was exactly where she belonged, standing tall, vindicated, and ready to fly again. The aftermath of Rachel's flight demonstration moved with the speed of a military operation. Within hours, General Hayes had personally flown to Riverside Air Force Base, accompanied by a full investigative team and members of the press who had caught wind of the story. Foster's video had been viewed over 10 million times, shared across every social media platform, and picked up by major news networks worldwide. The hashtag Duchess Phoenix Rising was trending globally, with stories pouring in from military personnel who had served with or been inspired by Phoenix Williams. "Captain Williams," General Hayes said as they met in Colonel Martinez's office, "I've reviewed the preliminary evidence you provided. If even half of this is accurate, we're looking at one of the largest corruption scandals in military history." Rachel sat across from the general who had once been her mentor, no longer the invisible cleaning lady, but fully transformed back into the confident officer she had always been. "General, it's all accurate. 8 years of investigation, cross-referenced, and verified." The Morrison Network reached into Congress, the Pentagon, and multiple defense contractors, Hayes continued, reviewing the documents. "The weapons sales alone represent hundreds of millions in illegal transactions." Martinez interjected, "Ma'am, Captain Thompson is currently in holding. His family's assets are being frozen pending investigation." "Good," Hayes replied firmly. "This corruption ends today." Outside the office, the base buzzed with activity. News crews had been allowed limited access, and reporters were interviewing personnel about Phoenix Williams' legendary reputation. The story had grown beyond military justice. It had become a symbol of resilience and the power of truth. Master Sergeant Williams found himself repeatedly interviewed. "Phoenix was the finest pilot I ever served with," he told reporters. "What happened to her 8 years ago was a travesty. Seeing her fly today, it was like watching justice take wing." Foster, now a reluctant celebrity due to his viral video, reflected on the day's events. "I thought I was filming a cruel prank. Instead, I documented one of the most important moments in military justice history." Thompson, in his holding cell, faced the complete collapse of everything he had believed about himself and his family. Military investigators were uncovering decades of corruption, illegal weapons sales, and the systematic destruction of careers of anyone who threatened to expose the truth. His lawyer delivered the devastating news. "Bradley, your family's entire fortune was built on illegal weapons sales. Your father, grandfather, uncles, they were all part of a conspiracy that sold American weapons to terrorist organizations. Phoenix Williams was trying to expose this when they framed her." The revelation broke Thompson completely. 8 years of tormenting someone who was not only innocent, but heroic. 8 years of believing he was superior to a woman who was, in every measurable way, his better. "I want to make a confession," Thompson said quietly. "Everything. I want to tell them everything I know." Back in Martinez's office, General Hayes was laying out the future. Captain Williams, I'm not just offering you squadron command. I'm offering you the chance to rebuild the entire investigation division. Root out corruption wherever it exists. Rachel considered the offer carefully. General, I accept, but with conditions. Name them. First, full review and reinstatement of every officer whose career was destroyed by the Morrison network. Second, new protocols to protect whistleblowers. Third, diversity training throughout the command structure to ensure that what happened to me never happens to anyone else. Hayes smiled. Agreed. All of it. And fourth, Rachel continued, I want to establish a foundation. The Phoenix Foundation, dedicated to supporting people who've been wrongfully accused or discriminated against in military service. Captain, you have my full support. As evening approached, the base held an impromptu ceremony. Hundreds of personnel gathered as General Hayes formally restored Rachel's rank and position. 8 years ago, Hayes announced to the assembled crowd, Captain Phoenix Williams was wrongfully accused and forced from service while trying to expose corruption that threatened national security. Today, we restore not just her rank, but our honor as an institution. Rachel stepped forward to address the crowd, her voice carrying clearly across the gathering. 8 years ago, I lost my career, my identity, and my faith in justice. But I never lost my belief that truth matters, that courage matters, and that sometimes the best way to fight back is to become excellent at what others say you cannot do. The crowd responded with thunderous applause. I spent 8 years as an invisible woman, cleaning the floors where officers walked, listening to conversations about military aviation while hiding my own expertise. I learned that dignity is not what others give you, it's what you refuse to surrender. Thompson watched from his cell window as the ceremony proceeded, the full weight of his actions finally clear. He had humiliated a hero, mocked a woman whose courage he could never match, and participated in perpetuating a system of corruption that had betrayed the very institution he claimed to serve. Today, Rachel continued, we prove that excellence cannot be permanently suppressed, that truth will eventually prevail, and that sometimes the people you underestimate are exactly the people who will change everything. As the ceremony concluded, Rachel found herself surrounded by young officers and enlisted personnel, many of them from diverse backgrounds who had found inspiration in her story. Captain, asked a young female pilot, what would you tell someone who feels like they don't belong? Rachel smiled, remembering her own struggles as a young officer. I'd tell them that belonging is not about being accepted by others. It's about being so excellent at what you do that others have no choice but to recognize your worth. Excellence is the ultimate argument. General Hayes presented Rachel with new insignia reflecting her promotion to Major. Major Williams, your new squadron awaits your command. As the crowd dispersed, Foster approached for one final interview. Major Williams, what's next for you? Rachel looked up at the sky where she had reclaimed her identity just hours earlier. Next, we make sure this never happens again. We build a military where competence matters more than connections, where courage is valued over compliance, and where the truth is more important than protecting powerful people. And personally? Personally, Rachel smiled. I'm going to fly every day as much as possible. I have 8 years of flying to make up for. That night, as the base settled into quiet, Rachel walked alone through the hangar where her transformation had begun. The F-16 she had flown sat in its designated space, a reminder of the day Phoenix Williams rose from the ashes of Rachel Davis. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, rebuilding trust, reforming systems, seeking justice for others who had been wronged. But tonight she simply stood in the hangar where her true identity had been revealed, grateful for the journey that had led her home. The invisible woman was invisible no more. Phoenix Williams had returned to the sky where she belonged, and this time no one would ever force her to land. 6 months later, Major Phoenix Williams stood in her new office at the Pentagon, overlooking the building where policies that had once destroyed her career were now being rewritten under her guidance. The Phoenix Foundation had processed over 200 cases of military personnel who had faced discrimination or wrongful accusations, achieving justice for 127 of them. Her secretary knocked and entered. Major Williams, your 3 o'clock appointment is here. Lieutenant Jennifer Chen, the pilot who was falsely accused of equipment sabotage. "Send her in," Phoenix replied, remembering her own feelings of desperation 8 years earlier. Lieutenant Chen entered nervously, a young Asian-American pilot whose career had been nearly destroyed by false allegations from a superior officer who resented her rapid advancement. "Lieutenant, please sit," Phoenix said warmly. "I've reviewed your case. The evidence clearly shows you were framed by Major Roberts, who has a documented history of discriminating against female and minority officers." "Ma'am, I just want to fly again," Chen said, her voice carrying the same pain Phoenix remembered feeling. "You will. Major Roberts has been court-martialed and dismissed from service. Your record is being expunged, and you're being reassigned to the 354th Fighter Squadron under my command." Chen's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, ma'am. I heard about what happened to you, how you survived 8 years of injustice. You give people like me hope. Lieutenant, you gave yourself hope by refusing to give up. I just made sure the system worked the way it should have from the beginning." After Chen left, Phoenix reviewed the latest report on the Morrison Network investigation. 17 military officers had been court-martialed, 3 congressmen had resigned in disgrace, and 2 defense contractors had lost their government contracts. The total value of recovered illegal weapons sales exceeded $500 million. Thompson had received a 15-year sentence for his role in the conspiracy, though his cooperation had helped expose additional corruption. From prison, he had written Phoenix a letter of apology that she had read once and filed away. Some debts could never be fully repaid. Foster, whose video had sparked the entire revelation, had been hired as a documentary filmmaker by the Air, forced to create training materials about recognizing and reporting corruption. His footage of Phoenix's flight demonstration was now used in military academies worldwide as an example of excellence under pressure. General Hayes called from the Joint Chiefs Office, "Phoenix, I have news. The President wants to award you the Presidential Medal of Freedom for your service in exposing military corruption." "General, I'm honored, but there are others more deserving." "Phoenix, your story inspired a complete reform of military justice procedures, whistleblower protections, corruption investigation protocols, diversity training requirements, all implemented because of your courage. You've changed the entire military culture." That evening, Phoenix returned to Riverside Air Force Base for a special event. The 354th Fighter Squadron, under her command, was graduating its first class of new pilots, the most diverse group in squadron history. Master Sergeant Williams, now promoted to Senior Master Sergeant, supervised the preparations. Ma'am 12. New pilots reporting for duty. 5 women, 4 minorities, all selected purely on merit. That's how it should be, Sergeant. Always. The graduation ceremony took place in the same hangar where Phoenix's transformation had occurred. The F-16 she had flown that day was now designated as a historical aircraft with a plaque reading, "On this aircraft, Major Phoenix Williams demonstrated that excellence cannot be permanently suppressed." Phoenix addressed the new pilots with words that carried the weight of hard-won wisdom. "You are here because you earned it. Not because of who you know, not because of family connections, but because you proved you belong in this cockpit. Remember that when others question your right to be here." After the ceremony, Phoenix took her traditional evening flight, a routine she had maintained for 6 months, partly for currency training, but mostly because she never again wanted to take for granted her ability to fly. At 15,000 feet, alone in the cockpit with the setting sun painting the sky in brilliant colors, Phoenix reflected on the journey from Rachel Davis to her current position. The invisible woman had become visible not through anger or bitterness, but through excellence that could not be denied. Her radio crackled with a familiar voice. "Phoenix, this is Tower. Beautiful evening for flying." "Copy that, Tower. Every evening is beautiful when you're doing what you love." "Phoenix, you've got visitors on the observation deck. Looks like some of your new squadron members." Phoenix looked down to see several small figures waving from the base's observation area. Her pilots, her people, watching their commander do what she did best. "Tower, Phoenix requesting clearance for aerobatic demonstration. For the kids." "Phoenix cleared for unrestricted aerobatics. Show them what excellence looks like." Phoenix rolled the aircraft inverted and began a series of maneuvers that spelled out "fly high" in contrails against the evening sky. Below, her pilots cheered and took pictures that would inspire future generations of aviators. as she completed the display and turned back toward base. Phoenix's radio carried one final message. "Phoenix, this is General Hayes. The President confirmed your Medal of Freedom ceremony for next month." The citation reads, "For extraordinary courage in exposing military corruption and for exemplifying the highest ideals of military service under the most difficult circumstances. General, I accept on behalf of everyone who was told they didn't belong but proved they did." Phoenix Williams landed as the last light faded from the sky, her aircraft touching down with the gentle precision that had become her signature. As she taxied to the hangar, she saw her squadron waiting. 12 young pilots who would never have to hide their excellence, never have to pretend to be less than they were. The Invisible Woman was gone forever. In her place stood a leader, a mentor, and a symbol of what was possible when truth and excellence finally received their due recognition. Phoenix Williams had risen from the ashes of Rachel Davis, and in doing so had lit a fire that would burn away the prejudice and corruption that had once nearly destroyed her. Some phoenixes, she had learned, don't just survive the fire. They use it to transform the entire world around them. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become a part of our Everyday Life Stories community. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. We love hearing from our amazing viewers around the world. Authors. Note, this story is inspired by the countless individuals who have faced discrimination and injustice, but chose excellence over bitterness, courage over surrender. While Phoenix Williams is fictional, her struggle represents the real experiences of many who have served their country with honor despite facing systemic barriers. Their persistence in the face of adversity continues to make our institutions stronger and more just.